it started with me with a client that I said, here's the estimated tax you should pay. And she came back the following year and her income went up $5,000 and her taxes went up $2,000, a 40% marginal tax. And I said, I made a mistake here.
Right, because at that point there was no 40% marginal rate.
Yeah,
right?
I said, well, I made a mistake. And so I went back and crunched the numbers and I go, what is going on? So I had to bring the client back and say, well, the tax program did the correct numbers, but this is a thing that's, it's taxing Social Security that I'm not familiar with. And so my research led me to Scott Burns's article on the tax torpedo. And so I'm starting to, hey, I've got to figure this critter out.
Right. That's what you're talking about is what is referred to in the tax world as the provisional income limits, right? And so just for people that aren't familiar with those provisional income limits for a married couple, I believe the number is $30,000 for a married couple, that up to 50%, and then
32,
and then 44, right?
44.
So if your provisional income eclipses 44,000, then up to 85% of your Social Security can become taxable, and that provisional income is made up of all taxable sources of income plus 50% of your Social Security plus any interest from tax-exempt bonds.
Correct.
What it doesn't include, which I think is the beautiful thing, is any distributions from a Roth IRA. That does not get included in that provisional income. So you can have as much Roth income as you want, and it doesn't cause any of your Social Security to become taxable.
Exactly. What this is saying is the distribution management can have a dramatic impact on your income, your net income after taxes. And these calculations aren't for the faint of heart. They're not something that an average individual is going to be aware of.
And I don't think they understand the magnitude of dollars that are at stake here. And, I always tell people when you're talking about the whole financial planning process, people are so focused on the investment return or what's going on in the economy. Those are things that are out of our control, right? But managing your distributions and properly claiming your Social Security strategies, those are well within your control. And you made a comment to me early on of how many different iterations there are that a person could come with their Social Security, and what's the difference between the best and the worst. What did you find there?
Well, an individual can start at 62 or any month in between up to age 70, and their spouse can do the same thing. And then you say, well, what's the prevailing cost of living adjustment? What is the tax provisions, et cetera? And we found out there's can be 1 trillion iterations for a couple as far as all this claiming strategies, and some of them have been eliminated. The ability to withdraw and suspend benefits, et cetera. But all these come into play. And again, to get through all of these minutia and find out what it means for an individual, the chart that we're talking about and looking at marginal tax actually changes, morphs, depending on your amount of Social Security that you have.
Right.
So it's not one chart that's the same for everybody. It's almost that each individual has their own chart.
It's almost like your fingerprint. It's unique to you.
Exactly.
And I think people want to try to say, well, let me just read a book about this and I'll figure it out myself. Or isn't there just a rule of thumb or something like that? And there's absolutely not. It is a very complex calculation that could make a difference of, maybe $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 of additional spendable money just by how you claim your Social Security and how you do the distribution planning.
Exactly. I could give you some examples and go on, but some of them are very dramatic. Life expectancy is probably the most important criteria, and in this calculation of what's better. One of the other things, and I've traveled around the country lecturing to planners, and one of the things that I get into a discussion about is life expectancy. And for many of us that have worked for good companies like Hallmark Cards for their career, you've had medical insurance, and take care of yourself. I think the baby boomers are going to blow away the life expectancy tables.
There's no question. They're already living longer.
Yes.
They're already more health conscious. They're doing things that their parents didn't do to stay healthy and do it and be more vibrant at an older age. Let's talk about life expectancy for a minute, because I think here is a big mistake that gets made when people are trying to decide what they should do with their Social Security. They're thinking about their own personal life expectancy. They're not thinking about the survivor, right? And so a lot of the Social Security claiming strategy should go under the assumption that one or the of the individuals is going to live beyond what is considered normal life expectancy today, and how you claim the spousal benefits, et cetera, and when one person claims versus another will impact that surviving spouse in a big way.
Let me throw out one statistic that I've come across. At age 65, there's a 50% probability that one of a married couple, one of the partners, will live to 90.
Yeah.
And given that, the concern can be for a lot of people is, am I going to outlive my money?
Right.
My resources. And if you stop and think that if a couple at age 65, that one of them will live to 90, you need to be prepared.
The other piece of it, I want to come back to the tax side of it. If you're a married couple and then all of a sudden one spouse is gone, you're now a single filer. And it's almost like a penalty to be a single filer. That married couple, the income's not going to change dramatically when one spouse passes away unless somebody has a large pension and they choose a single life only. So likely that income remains fairly close to what it was before, but the tax burden almost doubles.
Yes. I see this every year with widows that come to have their taxes prepared, and there's not much leniency on from the tax structure. You work with a different threshold for taxing Social Security, but I see more people getting into that situation, and they have fewer options. So it is horrendous. That marginal tax, when it occurs, can be at 44%. Hopefully, that's one of the recommendations that I would have for Social Security, is to index those thresholds, so that pushing that point at which Social Security benefits become taxable. Today, an individual or a married couple with Social Security as their only source of income, there is no federal or state tax.
Correct. Social Security by itself is a tax-free asset.
Correct. In 10 to 15 years, Social Security as a sole source of income will start to become taxable, unless they index those thresholds to move them out and adjust them every year with the cost of living.
So you made the point earlier, I think it was a Tax Reform Act of 1986, where Ronald Reagan signed that into law that caused the first 50% of Social Security to become taxable, and then it was Bill Clinton that took that up to an 85% rate. But those numbers, the 32,000 and the 44,000 we talked about earlier, they've remained exactly the same.
Correct.
Even though try to live today on what you were making in 1986, your standard of living would be far lower on the same income. In other words, we've had inflation, and so you're right, that number needs to go up. Those numbers should have been being indexed with inflation all along. They've indexed the amount of Social Security wages that are taxed with inflation, but they haven't adjusted this.
Starting your route to retirement.